Okay, we've all been there. That moment when you threw up in Dean Wormer's lap, yeah, it happened. When you told off that idiot in the parking lot that got the space you were trying to get, and it turned out to be the person you were interviewing with, or even when you just walked in the interview with a list of demands and the interviewer laughed out loud. It happens. All those things actually happen, asking for a friend. But, now Russ never blows interviews. He always gets a job. I usually completely screw up, and I get my little evaluation back, and they say arrogant jerk or something like that on it. Or, guy who spit on me in the elevator, that kind of thing. But we decided to actually bring somebody in that knew what they were talking about instead of just me and Russ. So we welcome Pam Fournier, the career expert and advisor today on Secure Digital Life. So stick around.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. .1, 99.2, 99.3, he's making the gangland symbol for 100, which is also a really nasty word in American Sign Language. Animal plasma.
Oh.
Yummy. Boy, I bet that's a fun place to work. He'll be on head cleaning duty or something like that.
Headcleaningduty.com.
You have to wipe the drool off his frozen head once a day or something like that. Or chip it. I don't know.
I heard you were watching some inappropriate content last night. Yeah. Meet you out in the quad at noon.
That's right.
So. Anyway.
Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists.
Considering a career in IT but not sure where to start? Start for free with IT Pro TV. Access more than 65 hours of IT training for free, no credit card required, with a free membership. When you're ready for more, explore the full IT Pro TV library, including training for CompTIA, Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, and more. Learn IT, pass your certs, and get a great job. Start your free IT Pro TV membership today. Visit www.securedigitallife.com/IT Pro TV. You and only you should register for our upcoming webcast with Kaseya, SaltStack, and Domain Tools by going to securityweekly.com/webcast. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find our on-demand library at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And some of you told us that you are overwhelmed by the amount of content we distribute. In an attempt to make it a little easier for you to find what you're interested in, we've created our own new listener interest list. Sign up for the list and select your interest by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe and clicking the button to join the list. You can also now submit your suggestions for guests in our recently released guest suggestion form. Go to, wait for it, securityweekly.com/guests and enter your suggestions. All right. So I thought we would have a discussion today about our top 10 mistakes that we think people make starting their careers. Now, I've interviewed for a lot of jobs and didn't get all of them, and interviewed a lot of people for jobs, didn't hire all of them, including people who were literally chained to a table. I actually did interview someone who was chained to a table once. I'm not kidding. It was Hannibal Lecter whole thing, and, fava beans and a nice Chianti kind of, scenario. But today, joining us is somebody who actually knows this stuff for real and not just like me. So Russ is on the cam, but Pam Fournier, would you tell us a little bit about your background? You're the expert.
Sure. So I am a career advisor at Roger Williams University. I joined the team in 2004. My main role as an advisor is to help students and alumni achieve their career and professional goals. I do this through a range of different services, everything from helping students learn more about who they are, resume cover letter review, practice interviewing, developing a network, all the way through landing their first job after graduation.
Oh, cool. Well, that sounds helpful. How about you, Russ? How many jobs have you had? Have you had a whole bunch of jobs?
I think I've kind of lucked out. I haven't. I've had about 4 professional jobs, and by professional I mean full time. And one of them, I currently work at the employer now. I've had served multiple roles here over the last 15 years at the university, and then I've had 2.5 other jobs. I guess 3.5 altogether, and then a bunch of like disposable jobs, part-time things and so on and so forth.
Yeah, down at the rest stop, that kind of thing. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I got that. Okay. Well, I've had lots of jobs, but I've never been fired. Interestingly enough, people always ask me that. Have you ever been fired? I was like, actually, strangely enough, I've not. I think I got close a couple times. I quit in a rage a couple of times. I actually threw my cell phone out the window. I said, "Good day to you, sir," and threw my phone out the window once. That was pretty interesting. I got politically shifted a couple of times where they kind of go, we've decided to make a change in the team, and I think we're going to move you over to maintenance for a while and see how that works out. And it's like, I think I get the hint here. But your career is important to you, and one of the things you should do is get it off to a good start and keep it on track. So we're going to talk. We made our list. So before the show, we made our list of our top 10 mistakes, and we'll talk about them a little bit and give some examples of what that was. I ranked them into order, so it was all me all the time, but that's why right here on Narcissism Today, we've got it. So our mistake number 10, and we'll talk about this one, was ignoring corporate culture. And I thought this was a really interesting one. Pam, why don't you tell us about what you think that means?
Sure. So hiring managers chose you for a reason because they thought you'd be a good fit not only for the job but the organization itself. So you really want to make sure that you pay attention to workplace culture. As an example, does your department go to lunch together? Do they celebrate work anniversaries? Maybe they look for volunteers at events. If so, sign up. By respecting workplace unspoken rules shows that you're a team player. And that you're willing to to know your coworkers beyond projects and deadlines.
Okay, yeah, I completely agree with that. I thought this was a good one to put on there. I saw this meme the other day where it was like some old geezer like me that was sitting there going, "You gotta be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you gotta show up in a suit and tie," and then they were making fun of millennials. And they were talking about, the millennial type is sitting there with their phone going, "Oh, wow, 8 o'clock in the morning, what a drag." And, my reaction to that was, old geezers, company failing, can't hire people anymore. But it's really, really critical that you do find a place that you fit in, because companies range all over the place. And as a consultant, I see so many different types of corporate culture. And as a consultant, I don't have to fit in. I can just be it myself, which is fun. But, you go somewhere and I've actually consulted for a company that couldn't hire. And one of the things they said, why will no one take our jobs? And I said, interview me. I said, put me through your process and let's see what it's like. And the first thing I noticed was that everybody there was wearing expensive, like formal business attire. And I was like, nobody wants this job. They want to wear T-shirts to work, and which I think was really a part of it. It was real uptight. They were real stuffy. They had this whole interview process. "We expect you to be here at 8 o'clock sharp each day," and I was just like, yeah, this is why nobody wants the job. Russ, I don't know. Do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, when I worked at my former employer, I served as an advisor as well as an instructor for IT, and we used to take the students on many different tours of employers that ranged from ultra conservative, a bank style environment, to ultra liberal, which was a startup firm. And you had sort of the polar opposites, where suit tie, your socks mattered, your shoes had to be shined and polished and all this stuff, to the other side of things, where they kept kegs on hand, and you could just walk up to the bar and help yourself during any hour of the workday.
Yeah.
So
like really Security Weekly.
Yeah.
The bar's right over there.
It really depends on what you're expecting, how you expect to work, and what you're willing to tolerate.
I completely agree, and you should think about that carefully, because I think when you first are looking for a job, you're like, I need a job, and you tend to just agree with everything, and like I knew a person who took a job at a religious university. I don't mean like a little religious. I mean like, whoa, it was like really religious. And this guy was like, not at all religious. And then he's calling us going, does anyone know how to say a prayer? I'm supposed to lead the prayer at the faculty meeting tomorrow, and it's like, yeah, right. I think I taught him some like Sumerian prayer for the harvest or something. But okay, mistake number 9, not researching. And I think this is people say, I already got the job. Do I need to research? And I'm like, wait a minute. You need to learn what's going on there. You need to learn who the players are, and you need to know their names. And I really encourage, especially with the modern age, you can find their faces. So it's really good to know the people that are the serious players at the company that are going to hurt you if you make some nasty remark to them in the elevator because you thought they were like somebody else, or you didn't know who they were at all, or you're standing I've seen this, they're standing in the elevator talking, and the senior vice president of IT that you don't know who he is standing there, and you're talking about what idiots the upper management are. I actually saw that happen one time. I was with the guy. I was with the senior VP, and we were standing in the elevator, and these two guys were like going on about what idiots the upper management were. Pam, do you have thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so definitely do your homework. It's so important. You don't want to waste the hiring manager's time or your time. So no matter how impressive your resume looks, if you go into an interview not knowing anything about the organization, it's going to really show. So you want to make sure that you're researching the company ahead of time. They're not expecting you to be an expert. Just get a general sense and understanding of what they do, what services they offer. Good practice, something I always recommend, is looking at the company's vision or mission statement, which is often found on the company website.
Oh, I want to ask you this, Pam. I actually did want to ask you this. Do you think you can overdo that? This is about interviewing. Do you think you can overdo that? Because there's there's a book that John Grisham wrote called The Firm. And there's a scene in The Firm where, and there was a movie made of it with Tom Cruise later. There's a scene in there where Tom Cruise is interviewing for this law firm job, and the interviewer makes some crack about, I don't remember what order the universities was in, but the interviewer says something like, so I see you went to Western Kentucky University, and Tom Cruise replies like, well, it's kind of like Kansas State, which is where the guy went. I've always done that. I always research as much as I could find out about people I was going to be talking to at interviews, and you just try to make sure they know that you did that. But can you think you can overdo that? I mean, like you could come in and kind of creep them out because you're going like, well, how are your kids, Tim and Mary? And they're like, wow, this guy's been like spying on my house or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a balance, right? So you don't ever want to come off as Mr. Know-it-all or whatnot, but and again, as I mentioned before, they're not expecting you to be an expert, and you shouldn't go in pretending like you're an expert about their company. But just definitely creating that balance and just having a general understanding is probably the best way to approach it.
I agree. Russ?
No, I completely agree with what Pam's saying here, and so I think that there is a balance between researching enough and researching too much. Don't use Facebook. Instead, use LinkedIn. That's where a lot of the legitimate stuff, and I think that's a good separation tool. Facebook is personal. LinkedIn is more corporate and business like. So I would use LinkedIn and feel free to use the information that you find there.
But don't forget to clean up your own Facebook page in this process.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I was interviewing somebody for a fairly high level job, and her Facebook page actually had a photograph of her snorting cocaine off of a beer keg. Yeah, and she didn't get the job, and she actually complained, and they said, well, we had pictures of you using illegal drugs, and she was like, oh, it was from a long time ago, and they were like, oh, so are you recovered now, or are you still doing this, but anyway. Okay, number 8, not negotiating salary. And I always say haggle for everything, because that's one of the things Americans really screwed up on. I mean, Americans do know how to make a good bathroom, which is something the rest of the world really missed out on. But Americans really missed out on haggling. And I used to work with Chinese students when they came to the United States. And one of the little things we did was I'd take them to the grocery store. And almost inevitably, the Chinese students would go to the checkout lane, and they would ring it all up on the cash register. And then the Chinese students would be like, okay, I'll give you 50. And the person's like, what? But, in the rest of the world, everybody negotiates. But in salaries, we absolutely do this, right? We really can negotiate your salary, and you really should. Pam?
Yeah, so this is a common mistake that's often made. So, sure, there's going to be those companies that don't have the room in their budget to negotiate, and are truly giving you the only number they can work with. But it certainly doesn't hurt to explore and ask. Few tips that I can give to successfully negotiate is definitely do your research, gain a general understanding in terms of what someone would make in that position within the company or industry itself. A couple of sites that I utilize to do that are salary.com and onetonline.org. I use ONET a little bit more. It's managed by the U.S. Department of Labor and Training, so it's has really reliable, accurate information. But both sites are easy to use. You just type in a title, location, and it will give you the median average salary for various positions. A couple other things quickly is just be prepared. So if you're going to negotiate for the top of that salary, you want to make sure that you're able to explain the experiences that you've had. What creative ideas can you bring to the table? Do you meet their minimum years of experience? Internship experience does count as part of that. And then look at the whole package. So oftentimes we focus just on a salary number, but it's so much more than that. You want to look at, what kind of professional development opportunities is the company offering? What does insurance package look like? How many weeks of vacation would you get? Are all important things to consider before making a final decision.
Yeah, and I really want to punch that part too because, look, jobs go all over the place. They go from, they offer you 45 and they've got this massive benefit package with pensions and health care and all this stuff. And a lot of young people are not really familiar with that kind of realm. So don't get hung up on a number like Pam just said. Remember to price a whole package together. And young people especially don't think about health care. They're like, oh, I don't need that. I'm not sick. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to need surgery. But you may. In Colorado, we didn't have that as much because everybody got their knees ripped up when they were like 19 and everything because they're always skiing and whatever. So here's the one I want to ask you, Pam. This is my most hated interview question. I loathe this question. I refuse to answer it. It's tell us what salary you want. And, my answer to that is make me the best offer you can. So what should we be answering to that question, Pam?
Sure. Whenever possible, you always want to try to get the person interviewing you to throw out a number first.
Mm-hmm.
If depending on how the conversation's going and they're really pressuring you to come up with a number first, it's better to give an exact figure rather than a range at that point. And again, that's where the research beforehand becomes very important. So you know what the average salary is within that position. And you'll know your bottom line number. So definitely, try to have them give you a number first. And if not, an exact figure is always the best approach if you have to come up with one first.
Yeah, I think you have to research that, but I just hate that question because and it's a really tough one. When they ask you that and you go high or you go low or whatever, I just think it's just a big. I just refuse to answer it. I don't just say I refuse, but I give them that. I think you should make me the best offer you can if you think I'm the right fit for the job. Because I'm just not going to tell you a number, and I want to see what you're paying. I don't actually want you to hire me. If I walk in and I say I want $90,000, and you were thinking 40, and they say, well, we want this guy, we're going to pay him 90. I mean, I don't want to be that person either, because then I'm the person they hired for 90, and they're going to have really high expectations of that. Russ, you have any thoughts about that one?
I want to add a couple things there. Number one, we didn't mention benefits specifically, retirement. 401k, 403b, depending on if you're working for not-for-profit or not. And I mean, those benefits, those retirement packages are oftentimes worth a heck of a lot of money. And you want to look at stock options if they offer them. Some companies, some organizations, companies give you stock options to buy into the stock. So the better they do, the better you do. And you also want to look at things like reimbursement. I know, Pam, you had mentioned PD, which is great. Does the company reimburse you for certifications, if it's technical, or maybe even scholastic activities, conferences, things like that? So
yeah, like if they're going to send you to 2 SANS classes every year, that's a lot of bucks. And
yep.
I mean, those
so you need to calculate that.
$5,000 a piece without the cost of the travel. So don't take that job that paid you a little more money over the one that's going to actually help you develop your career. So it's definitely, and don't forget grad tuition and all that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely. I was going to say that too. Some companies will offer tuition assistance as well, which is nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That could be real money. especially if you want to do that kind of stuff. And then try to think ahead too. I mean, don't just think about this next 6 months. Try to think about what am I going to be in 2-3 years, and well, maybe I will want to go to grad school, and having those things is nice. Okay, mistake number 7. Failing to ask questions, and both at the interview and also as you start your job. So you've got a job. I've seen this over and over again. You say, can you go build me this Docker Flask site? And the person goes, yeah, sure. And I've been on the other side of that as well, going, yeah, of course, absolutely. And then I'm running to the bookstore to hope there's a book on that, or today to the internet. But don't not ask questions because you feel like people would think you're stupid or something. They don't expect you to know everything on day one. And when you do that, you tend to fail at tasks because you take on too much, and that's another item later. Pam,
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. So learning the ropes of a new position is hard, and no one, just like you said, expects you to know everything on the first day. So you shouldn't be embarrassed to ask questions like, what is the approval process for a creative initiative, or even something as simple as, how do I set up my printer? When you get the request that clarification, it really does show managers that you're willing to do things right the first time.
Russ?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also one of the questions that people that I've worked with in the past or tried to get jobs for fail to ask is like something simple like, what's the reporting structure? I'm not saying ask for an organizational chart unless you want to, but who am I reporting to? Does this position report to the director? Does this position report to the VP? And then do some research on that individual and find out a little bit of information about them and see if there's something that might be interesting for you or maybe even not. So.
Yeah, and and my 2 great questions to remember to ask: what is the scope? And what are the specs? If people give you stuff to do and they don't give you the scope and they don't give you the specifications, you're just asking for trouble. They say, oh, could you build us a new customer interface? And you're like, yeah, sure. And you just run off and you build something and bring it back, and they're like, God, this is the most awful thing I've ever seen in my life. And then that just taints your whole experience and their perception of you. I've seen that more than once, where they sent somebody off to build something, a person came back with it, and they're standing in front of the board. They didn't expect that. They thought it was going to come in. It was going to be a beta or something. And they come in and they're like, oh, present it to the board tomorrow. And this poor person is standing there going, here's my new customer system. And the board's like, that's outrageous. Didn't anybody tell you the CEO does not allow the color red to be used in this organization ever? But, okay, mistake number 6, in the same light, asking too many questions. So we told you to ask questions, but you can also ask too many questions. I did not hire you so that I have to show you every single thing you have to do every single time. And I also did not hire you so that I could Google stuff for you that you could look up yourself. I hate that when people come. I've had employees do that. They come running in every 5 minutes going, okay, I got this error message. What does it mean? I'm like, it's in the error message manual. It's online. It's in 1,000 places. You could have looked it up. Why? Well, you're the expert. I know, but if I'm going to debug it for you, I could just do it myself. So don't ask too many questions. But I'll let these guys talk about that. Pam.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's definitely about, again, creating that balance. So you want to be careful and not ask too many questions, although most would be happy to show you the ropes and it's okay to ask questions. You definitely want to create that balance so you're not bothering your coworkers with endless requests for assistance. So just want to be careful there.
Russ?
No, I agree. I think that too many questions can also be perceived as too desperate or too inquisitive, and that you don't have a lot of other options. And you want to sort of leverage that power structure between too much and too little. So I think definitely balance between the two is good.
I completely agree. I mean, it's twitchy when people say, "Oh, find a balance," but it really is important that you do, because just think about things like this. If you can look it up. I try to tell students this all the time, too. I'm like, if you can look this up, why are you emailing me? I'm going to have to look it up. So somebody wrote me today, and they said, what's the drop date for these classes? And I'm like, I don't know. It's on the calendar, the academic calendar. Can't you go look that up? They go, oh, could you just look that up for me? And it's like, really? Like, well,
Doug, can I add one other thing, too? I think it's important that not only the quantity, but the quality of questions as well. You don't want to ask, like you said, things that you can find online or whatever, but sometimes people dive right in. The first question in their first interview would be like, oh, what's the salary range? And that's kind of not, there's an element of tact that needs to be employed.
Yeah.
And you want to be careful about that.
Yeah, I agree. So mistake number 5, this is Russ's favorite, and it's a lot of our favorites, the failure to say no. And this is one of the most difficult things on the earth. And I'm not telling you that you should try to underperform at your job. I'm not telling you that when your supervisor comes to you and they say, can you do this pen test, that you should say, no, come on. When they tell you, I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday, and you go, nope, not doing that. But you also should not start taking on other people's tasks. And I see this all the time. I know people who do this. I could name many of them personally. Russ is raising his hand. I have also been guilty of this, and most of you will be guilty of it. And you feel very flattered when someone comes to you and they say, Doug, could you help me with this code? And it's like, well, yeah, sure. And then, and the next thing you know, you're doing their job. And I actually had that once, and I was doing the person's code, and then they literally every day would come in and go, could you take a look at this too? And this? And oh, yeah, how about this one? And you're such a good coder. Could you code this maybe? I'm terrible at this. It's what I used to get out of doing laundry. I'm so bad at laundry. I just can't do it. But, I mean, the next thing you know, you'll be doing 110 hours a week. You're doing other people's jobs, and they'll be staring out the window or going to lunch while you're doing their work for them. And then I assure you, when the time for the credit comes, they will be at that meeting going, our team has done such an outstanding job. I want to thank everybody. I mean, I was the lead, but, there were others contributing. Thank you very much. And it's like that. Pam?
Yeah, so, when starting a new job, managers assign smaller tasks for a reason, because it takes time to understand organizational goals, to get to know your coworkers, and your workload. So you definitely want to focus on the assignments that are given, do it well. Because if you overextend yourself, it definitely can lead to mistakes, to missed deadlines. Once you get to know the whole team and understand your organization's goals, then you can definitely jump into more bigger, challenging assignments. And we actually, at my old job, had a coworker who did the same thing. I think he meant well, but he tried to take on too many assignments, both inside and outside of his job description. It ended up just inevitably making him very overwhelmed. And then as a team, we were hesitant to give him any new tasks or have him help with any of our bigger projects.
And you start failing. But now Russ knows when I say, hey, Russ, those bags aren't going to carry themselves up to our room by themselves, that he knows to jump on that task. But Russ, I'm sure you have a comment on this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I am one of those failure to say noers, and I've learned a little bit over time that you just can't do everything for everyone. And as much as I like to try, like Pam said, sometimes I take on too much and then nothing gets done, and that ends up looking bad, even though, at the beginning it looks, like you're motivated and willing to take on those new tasks. But you have to see tasks to fruition. And you have to not so much take on all of them, but you have to finish them as well, and that's when it starts to look bad if you can't finish anything.
Yep. Mistake number 4, and we've all been guilty of this. I certainly have. Being above something like a task. If they come in and they say, we need somebody to sweep up your new. I mean, grab the damn broom and sweep. I will, and I mean, but I in my head, I have to say, don't be a snob, don't be elitist. We all value ourselves; it's inevitable. But when they give you a task and you feel like you're above it, suck it up and do it, and do it well, and you'll move out of that pretty soon. Pam?
Yeah, so for sure. So. No matter where you are in your professional career, it's always important to keep an open mind and be flexible with any task that is asked of you. Stepping outside of your job description definitely shows that you're a team player and are willing to be part of a solution. An example, I can attest to this. I supervise our office assistants, and I would never ask them to do an assignment or a task that I wouldn't do myself. As a result of that, I feel like they respect me more and they're more eager to do a good job for me or take the initiative to, seek out additional responsibilities.
Yeah, I would actually add to that too. Take care of the staff, because they will take care of you. Because if you don't take care of your staff, you will definitely find your plane tickets being misbooked to via 7 stops and things like that. So take care of your staff, and they will take care of you, Russ.
And also the willingness to do things that are outside your job description shows an element of leadership. So, if you're looking to, quote unquote, climb that corporate ladder that some people are, that sweeping the floor or cleaning the bathroom or doing, those other similar, seemingly inane tasks. I mean, it demonstrates leadership and that you're willing to do whatever you need to do to get ahead. So that's good.
Yeah, I agree. Mistake number 3. This is one of my favorites. Letting your guard down. This is like welcome to Doug's world of paranoia, but it's a good paranoia. And then sometimes they really are out to get you. Look, at some point, either in the interview process, when you get close to getting hired, or maybe even after you start that job, they're going to take you out. But look, they're always watching, especially during the interview process. We used to do this to people. We'd take these programming candidates out. We'd take them to dinner, and they'd say, oh, we're going to let you go out with the junior people here. And then the junior people are all ordering drinks and stuff because the company's paying. Don't let idiots pressure you into drinking too much. My favorite story on this, we took this guy out. This guy literally, like he said, he wanted to, he introduced, he said, how about some shots? And he got shots of tequila. And all the people that work there are pretty hard drinking types anyway. This guy was obviously not a hard drinking type. I don't know if he was trying to impress us or what. After about 3 shots of tequila, the guy was completely hammered, took his shirt off, was up on the table like screaming along to the song, and then got in a fist fight with somebody in the restaurant. It didn't get the job. So remember that somebody's probably watching. You may have to go along on some kind of venture that you are not really into, and I'm not talking about letting yourself get harassed or abused or anything like that, but you have to stay in control of the situation, and you have to remember that the upper management may be sitting at a table across the room, that the people that you're with may be asked to report on your behavior when they go back to the office the next day. That was very common and standard, and they may definitely be talking about your bad behavior. So be advised that stuff can end up costing you a job or costing you your career if you're already working in that job because somebody's taking notes and reporting back. Pam?
Yeah, so you definitely want to be careful and not, participate in something just to fit into the office. It's going to get you in trouble later on down the road. But I think, again, this is about creating balance. It's also important, some tend to bury themselves in their work and not interact with others. And while it may be nerve-wracking to introduce yourself, you want to make the most of you, especially on the first 90 days. And get to know your team. You're going to be working with these individuals on projects. And research actually shows that when you're friends with your coworkers, you're more happier in the workplace. So you definitely want to create that balance.
Russ?
I think Pam said it quite well. It's all about that balance. Again, that's a common theme or thread that's been through all of these things. So making sure that you're not behaving like an animal at a corporate Christmas party or whatever holidays they celebrate. And don't go out and do those shots with those people if you're not comfortable with doing it. And just try to remember that somebody's always watching. That's a good rule of thumb.
And when the famous Sambuca incident ends up on YouTube, remember people at the company have access to YouTube as well. We enough said. Mistake number 2: don't bring your personal life into work. And this was a little twitchy one, but I really like it because I know you can't stop your crazy ex from showing up at the office and screaming at people. I know you can't stop your crazy brother from showing up at work and throwing a coffee cup through the window. But look, if you can keep this stuff at home, and when you come to work and all you do is whine and cry about how tough it all is at home or whatever, I just think that just derails your career. You become that person nobody wants around. It may be that you need other kinds of help, but that gets tough at work. If they have counseling, go to it. But and it may not be minor things. But we had somebody once, a programmer. He had this ex-girlfriend. She showed up all the time at work. She'd have these screaming fits in the parking lot. She'd get in the building, and she'd have screaming fits there, yelling at him, yelling at other people, and it was just like, dude, this is out of hand. Do something about it. Pam?
Yeah, so when you're part of a team, there's going to definitely be that social aspect to it. We all have our own personalities, our likes, our dislikes, and our lives outside of the office. When done properly, sharing a little bit about ourselves or getting to know your coworkers can actually help build a strong team. But when personal problems start to overtake your work life, then that becomes the issue. So again, I know this is the theme that we keep on talking about, create that balance. It's okay to share with your coworkers frustrations you may have had over the weekend. But you also don't want to become, that you want to avoid becoming that person that no one wants to be around because you're constantly complaining and bringing the energy of the group down.
Yeah. Russ, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that pretty much sums up what I wanted to say about that, yeah.
Russ has been the crazy ex showing up at work on more than once, What? I'm just kidding.
You're a nut job.
Yeah, it was actually me. So, yeah. All right. My number one mistake that I put on my list was taking criticism personally. A lot of times different people have the ability to talk to you or tell you something. I try to tell my forensic students about, you go to these court cases and these depositions and you see these lawyers just rip each other to shreds. You see this in politics. I used to see this in Washington. You'd see these people in these hearings, they're sitting there ripping on each other and they're going at each other tooth and nail. And then the meeting's over and it's breaking up and the guy's like, hey, you want to grab a beer? And they're going down to a bar to hang out. Be careful about when somebody comes in and they say this report you did is not very good, and unlike me, some people are not very tactful. Me being, of course, the master of tact and decorum, but they may come and hand you your report and go, "This is awful," and you can't let that become the defining thing about you. You can't let that be the way you are at work. Oh, they hate me. Do it. Just take that and blend it into the way you do your job and make your job better for it, and not just let that thing beat you down. If somebody's harassing you, abusing you, bullying you, that's a whole different animal. But I'm just talking about somebody coming in and saying, this report you did, it's awful. And don't let that, oh, he hates me. That's probably not the case. Pam?
Yeah, so criticism can definitely feel like, we're not doing our jobs right, especially when you're starting a new position. But it's constructive feedback is actually the best way to become a fully functional member of the team. So my recommendation is, whenever your boss offers a critique, take it with grace, add it to your notes, and definitely keep it in mind for the future.
I agree. Russ?
Yeah, when I worked at my former employer, this was a huge thing that the young adults that we were teaching needed to learn. It's issuing and receiving feedback, and so there's a whole schema of rules and regulations for this kind of thing. Always start with the positive, and then turn that into what they wouldn't use the word negative, but in a binary society like we are, that's what it is, a negative. And making sure that your timing is right. If somebody is already beaten down, don't sit there and issue feedback to them. It's not, you're not trying to target them specifically. But that's a big rule of thumb is just learning how to receive and take feedback. So.
All right. Well, Pam gave us some tips, which I'm gonna throw out there. We're really over time, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Use a career center early and often. I thought that was a great, if your university or wherever you are has a career center, you should go there as soon as you can and check it out. Your high school may have a career center as well. Network, I thought that was one of the greatest tips I could tell you. It would be the first one I would write as well, is get to know, especially in security world. It's such a small community. The more people you know, unless you're like me, then it's probably better if not many people know who you are. But most people, it's better if everybody knows you. They'll know that name when they see the resume. I know when I get a resume for a job and I know that person or I've met them, 90% of the time that's a positive thing. I'm like, I have a face to put with that name, and I go, oh yeah, that's somebody. Tailor your application material to the job, absolutely, and find a mentor. And mentors, Pam, have you got any tips for finding a mentor? I'll let you field that one.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a great resource. You can actually, in the search bar, if you have a LinkedIn page, type in a title and just see what individuals are in that field. There's also, with many universities, if not all at this point, have LinkedIn accounts where you can join on their page and actually look up alumni who are currently working in the field. You can also use your college career center to help you identify leads and contacts. Are probably some of the best ways. Talk to faculty on campus, family and friends, who all can probably provide you with contacts to find a mentor.
Cool. So some great tips there from Pam Fournier from Roger Williams University. I already have an idea for another show I want to have Pam on to do, because I think she's a great resource. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Russ, for joining us from the great blue room in the sky. And we'll see you next time on Secure Digital Life.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.